And so right now I'm going to hand it over to Catherine Green, who is our CalPro Project Director. Thank you all. Catherine?
Thanks, Jennifer. Thank you all for coming. I realize it's summer for many of us, and we choose to be here. I'm really grateful that you came today. I had the pleasure of listening to this presentation before at CCAE, and I was so struck by it. I thought we have to share this with the rest of the state, and so I invited Peggy, Deanne, and Felisa to tell us about their wonderful program innovations to up the amount of rigor in ABE and ASE instruction in particular. And we will be in the next week approximately sharing the recording of this on our online video library on our website. So, so if there are colleagues that you'd like to share this with, know that will be one way to do that if they weren't able to attend. So I don't want to take up precious content time. I'd like to hand the mic over to, I guess, Peggy first, and she will take it away from here. And I'll come back on at the end and remind you how you can continue beyond this webinar to learn from these presenters' experience and engage with them when we hold a week-long guest-moderated discussion in our electronic community of practice, which has a website shown on the screen. Very good. So without further ado, I hand this over to the Fremont Union team. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Hi, everybody. This is Peggy Romlandy. I'm the principal of Sunnyvale Cupertino Adult School, also known as FUHSD Adult School. We're in the Fremont Union High School District, not to be confused with Fremont Unified, where my children go to school. We're actually in Sunnyvale Cupertino and right next to Apple and Google and all of those other monstrosities. Today with us, as Catherine said, is Deanne Berryhill. She's one of our English instructors and a lead teacher in helping people align with college and career readiness standards. And then Felisa Valabi, who is our full-time college counselor. We actually call her transition counselor. And so they'll have parts in this as well. I want to just point out a couple of things. First of all, there's a chat box down below about what you're hoping to learn. And since some folks haven't typed in there, I'm assuming that what you want to learn is really just what our program is and what we're doing with the college and career readiness standards, and what all of this has to do with rigor. And so that's great. And for the 4 of you that typed in there, we'll be actually addressing everything that you're requesting there. So that'll be great. Also on the right-hand side, you should be able to see files that you can download. We'll reference these when we go to different slides, and we'll come back to this page or this layout at the end so that you're able to download those, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and switch the screen into a presentation mode, and we'll begin. Okay, and so our title is Upping the Game of Academic Rigor, and since 2002, Sunnyvale Cupertino has been kind of on a quest to increase rigor. It's been at the heart of our decision making. It's driven a lot of systematic changes and a lot of personal changes for instructors and for students. It's altered our curriculum dramatically, and it has really pushed us to create a great deal of student support pieces that we did not have before. So why the rigor? Well, what we know is that in the next decade, 63% of the jobs that are out there are going to require post-secondary training. We know that of the new jobs created, some of which we don't even know what they are at this point, 90% of those are going to require post-secondary training. And so for all of these things, it really forces us in the adult world to kind of rise to the challenge to not just graduate students, not just transition them into career programs, but to actually make them ready and have them have a mastery in areas that will really lead to success no matter what they do. And this also means that we need to create a variety of student support systems. And what we found is that those support systems are just as important as the curriculum, that it all goes together for student success. Okay, so on this slide, what you see is a wheel. And one of the handouts that you have is this wheel. Another handout you have is a white paper created by AIR in May of 2014 that really creates this college and career readiness organizer. And so it's a graphic that is kind of a consolidated overview of all the elements that impact learners' ability to succeed in college and careers. And it also kind of ties in the complexities of how things link together and overlap. And it's not a checklist. So on this wheel, you don't say, okay, well, if I have to do all of these things. It's not that. It's set up so that you have a couple of things. You have strands, and the strands are, let me get a pointer here. Maybe. I don't see my pointer. Okay. Oh, there it is. So the strands are, sorry guys, kind of a rookie at this. It's for whatever reason that pointer is stuck. Okay, so let's just use colors then. So for example, in green, one strand is goals and expectations. In yellow or orange, outcomes and measures. And so those are the strands, and each of those strands has kind of a guiding question that's in the wheel. And then there are components, and those are the bulleted items that really are for discussion to begin to look at, you know, what are the things that you need at your site, where are the places that you can begin and start to change your system to make students more college and career ready. Okay, so for us, for example, if you look at just the outcomes and measures, one of the things that, one of the components that we look at is we look at under the first thread there of on-track indicators for readiness, we look at behavior and conduct and social and emotional learning benchmarks. So for example, we use measures like phone calls and students calling in and letting us know that they are sick or they had something come up at work, and how they are going to communicate with the instructor, and please let the instructor know. So that's a benchmark for us. Another benchmark for us is our graduation and the number of students who actually graduate with a diploma. And so if you take and you look at this and take it as a way to begin a conversation with people, you might be an administrator wanting to talk to teachers, or you might be a teacher trying to just think through this, and maybe you find a peer that can help, you know, just have a conversation. It's a great way to start to say, what if? What if we did this? And all of these things lead to rigor and lead to college and career readiness. That is the goal. Okay, so how is success measured? So for us, I mentioned, you know, we do things like phone calls. We also do things like persistence rate. We track our persistence rate because we want to know that students are in the classroom and they're staying in the classroom. So they come, they attend, they complete the classes, they have persisted. Our persistence rate before we changed our program was around 60%. So now we're almost hitting 90%. So this is one of our indicators. Another indicator that we use are the number of students that graduate. We started changing our program in 2012-2013, and so we looked at the data from 11-12, so we had 25 high school diploma graduates. Last year we had 68. So if we're going up every year and increasing the number of graduates, for us, we feel like that's a good measure to show that our program is successful. We've also realized that by using the wheel and using the elements on the wheel, that really all of that kind of goes together to create a community of learners, and how critically important that is. And we've embedded a number of the success organizer components in our kind of daily living at the school, and we act in ways that are very strategic and explicitly linked to building that community of learners. And I don't think we really realized how we just naturally were doing that and explicitly doing that, and it kind of became the norm in our place until we heard from some of our students. And we had a couple of our alumni come back, and this is Ray on the left and Amber on the right. And these students came back, and we just turned on a camera and started asking them about, so how are things going, and what was it about our place that made a difference for you? And so rather than us just telling you that we're doing it, we're going to have our students share with you their perspective. So here you go.
I'm always and I'm not afraid to say that I graduated from an adult school. Like, a lot of people are like, they're like afraid, and I'm like, no, I sure did from an adult. Yes, well, I did.
Like for my English 1A class, we had to write about a community, like a community that impacted us and shaped us. And I wrote about here, and I wrote about the Ai Weiwei field trip. Like, for me, that was just a complete 180 in my life. I was just like, oh my gosh, I can conquer this life and the endeavors of it.
Very diverse. It's not just sort of say just one culture stance. We had a lot of people from different walks of life, as far as ages, as far as race, as far as color, as far as personality. So I think that's one of the biggest things. You don't feel like you're kind of you don't feel, how do you say the word? What's the word? Like an outcast. Right. You feel whole, little family.
And ACE also gave me, restored my own personal power.
Exactly.
Something I lacked.
They restored my attitude. I'm going to say that. I was rambunctious, but ACE they really toned it down to where now I'm more soft, more nurturing, more approachable, I guess, sort of say. Because sometimes a face can say everything. So yes. They really molded me, just not even just the staff, like my peers, like Amber here. Like, she played a big part. Just knowing that you have people around you that are looking at you, it can really help you in life. So it molded me as more of a student at community college, being able to go to my resources and use that.
Okay, and I think these young ladies articulate it well. You're going to see Amber, who was the person on the right. You're going to see her again in another video, and it's a video that was filmed long before this one. So get a good look at her right now, because what we noticed is actual physical change in the way the student looks and how she presents herself. Ray's another one. She talked about, we softened her a little bit. And all of those things are part of creating that community of learners. So when we talk about the components from the wheel, things like field trips, that's an example of how we kind of provide guidance on a different level, how we support kind of social and emotional learning as well. And so I don't know what more to say about that. They're absolutely fantastic. Okay. So other specific changes led to kind of this context of a daily community of learners. We revamped our system completely, and in a number of very specific ways. We switched to direct instruction. In the past, we completed ASE with one teacher teaching all subject areas and maybe having some tutors. We graduated, 25 or 30 a year, but we had a number of students drop off. And what we found in calling them and saying, hey, why'd you leave us? What's going on? It was the independent study that was the problem, and the fact that they just didn't have the skill set that they needed. And that really started us revamping. We also have vertically aligned our courses. This year we've vertically aligned, thanks to the help of CalPro, advanced ESL through ASC, and they're all aligned to the college and career readiness standards. In the humanities area, this summer we're working on math. We created departments, so where we used to have one teacher, we now have, say, 8. And we revamped our intake process, and you're going to learn about SOAR, and you're going to learn about Cal State University's Expository Reading and Writing for College course, and how we use that really as a process and a vehicle for increasing rigor and helping teachers to understand that they could do that and still engage students. And that's something Carla mentioned in the chat box earlier, that she wants to be able to increase rigor and engage students. I assume that means not scare them away, and that's exactly what ERWC did for us. So we'll talk more about that. We're going to share some details on each of these items. One of the people that's going to talk is our counselor, who was another change to hire a full-time counselor, and talk about our Learning Resource Center. And then, next week, as mentioned in the Community of Practice, online Community of Practice, Deanne can kind of facilitate a conversation with you guys about, where are you at and where might you begin? And so hopefully you'll find that really useful. At this time, what I want to do is I want to see, before we launch into talking about these items, what is it that everybody else has in place? And so I'm going to bring a poll up here, and hopefully you're all going to see this. And it's going to broadcast the results as you do it, so some people are already jumping in. If you do these things, please click the box. Any and all that you do. Okay, so it looks like a lot of people are doing direct instruction, and that's fantastic. So we can talk more about that. It looks like people are not using ERWC, so we can definitely kind of detail why that for us. We do have an academic readiness class. It's our SOAR class, so we're going to talk about that. And it looks like some of you have the human capital to actually begin some of this work. So you have counselors or transition advisors, you have maybe some ongoing staff development where you could bring people together, and it looks like people are maybe getting paid to collaborate. If there are administrators on this webinar, it's critical that we pay our people and bring them together and honor them as teachers and pay them. So I'm just going to put that plug in for teachers there. Okay, so that tells us a lot actually about where to focus the rest of the slides, and our conversation on those slides. Okay, so one of the things that we had to do in revamping was we also needed to rethink our expectations for students, and our expectations are grounded kind of in a belief that students want rigor and that innately they know it will benefit them throughout their lives. Yeah, as a former high school English teacher, even in high school, students want rigor. The key is that they have to feel confident to do it and to achieve it. And so having a belief that they want it and they want to achieve at high levels, and that they can indeed do that, and that all students can achieve at high levels, orienting ourselves this way, I think, has created our transition success. And it's created a school mindset that put things in place to make it happen. So resources, we needed to expand our own human capital, which is also listed on the CCRS wheel. So we identified an instructional lead, and that's Deanne, who went to the CalPro training on the College and Career Readiness Standards, and we are paying her to lead conversations with her colleagues. We're paying teachers to come together and to collaborate, and not just paying them, but we have meetings every week. And so we're dedicating specific time and money, and when we do our master schedule includes that time for the department meetings, for the curriculum meetings, and we also had to, talk to the staff and make sure that they are kind of all in, that they know what they're committing to. And it doesn't mean that that's always easy. We did have one of our staff members who just had a lot going on and was unable to follow through with the commitment from about March on this year. And so, things like that happen, but you want to make sure you have the conversation ahead of time about really what they're going to bite off here and what they're going to be expected to do. And it also meant revamping our induction and guidance model. And as I said, we hired a full-time counselor. We actually did this prior to AEBG, although we've made that an ongoing position thanks to consortium dollars. And Felisa is the one really who shepherded in the SOAR class, created that, and kind of revamped that whole induction process. So I'm going to turn it over to Felisa at this point.
Okay. Hi, so as Peggy mentioned, I'm Felisa. I'm the counselor here at Adult School. We really do believe in kind of creating academic expectations and high academic rigor from the moment students step onto our campus. And one of the ways we do that is through our induction process. So we have a 3-tier process. The first is our placement test. Students come and they take a CASAS reading test. They then come back for a 3-hour SOAR orientation. SOAR stands for Student Orientation to Academic Readiness. And in that 3 hours, we have them do elements of what we expect them to be doing in the classroom. So sometimes that's icebreakers, sometimes it's a quick write, sometimes it's a gallery walk. We talk about the expectations of our program. We talk about obstacles that we have seen our students have. We talk about the importance of communication and what that means for us to be able to support them and help them kind of get to their next step in their goals. We have them also create a professional email. So before they can go to the next step of our induction process, they have to show that they have a professional way to communicate with us. We even talk about how you leave a voice message and communicate with your teachers about not being in class and how you get work. So there's a lot that happens in that 3 hours that really kind of sets the stage for creating a community of learners that we think is really important. We also invite other staff, so we have an assistant principal and our coordinating teacher and I that will kind of trade off doing the orientations, and so we're modeling what it means to be a community of learners as well from the staff perspective while we're going through this orientation. At the very end of that, they then sign up for an individual counseling program meeting. Those take about an hour, and each one of our students will go through that. So in the beginning of the year, we have about 100, 150, and then quarterly we have managed enrollment where quarterly we'll do this process again. So every 8 weeks we bring students into our program. We invite teachers to be a part of our counseling sessions, so they'll come and sit and we look at transcript together and we talk about their timelines, their goals, what their next steps are, and we make sure to figure out what the best placement is for them within our program through that counseling session. Making sure that we have appropriate program placement is important to us too. We have our GED and our high school diploma classes happen in the same classroom with the same teachers. Students don't necessarily even know which one is working towards which goal. We believe in the same kind of information and the same kind of critical thinking skills for both of our program options. So students are in the same classes. But in terms of helping them understand how many credits they have, what might be the best option for them based on their timeline of wanting to get done with something, we spend a lot of time thinking through those. We do have 3 program options. We do have a GED. We do have a high school diploma. It's 180 credits in our program for our district. And we have a third option that we have called our High School Diploma 2, which is where students can take the GED or a high school equivalency, pass the subject tests, and then in addition, they can take 30 credits, 10 of our ERWC or an upper division English class, 10 U.S. history, 5 Gov, and 5 Econ, and our board will actually issue students a high school diploma in addition to having their GED complete. And we did this because we've got a lot of students that are emotionally connected to that high school diploma, and so it means a lot to them to make sure to be able to get that for their family, for themselves. But if they have a lot of credits left, and we don't think that we're going to be able to retain them through 120 credits if they're deficient that many, this is a really awesome option for them to be able to meet their goals without compromising those things. We do have information about our high school diploma protocols and details about eligibility listed in our downloadable section of information. Okay. Another piece of what we do, especially kind of from the counseling and the social emotional perspective of supporting our students and upping academic rigor, is through specific targeted supports. We do this in a lot of different ways. One of the ways we do that is through transition meetings. So this is from our 5 high school sites. So we go to the high school sites, we talk about what their options are, we work closely with some of the educational options programs within our districts, and we meet with students even before they come into our program. It also means that we're meeting one-on-one with students to help them figure out what their next steps might be for transitioning them outside of our program, whether that's college or career or vocational training, to make sure that we've addressed those pieces. We also have specific intervention meetings, so this could be anything from a student is having a bad day in the classroom, and the teacher will let me know, hey, you know, John was really off. He didn't seem like he was present. It seems like there's a lot going on. And so it gives me the opportunity to go and check in and say, okay, what's happening? What's going on? And to kind of create an intervention before it becomes a problem, which has been really helpful for us. And it's been important to build that relationship with students that then effectively helps us transition them. We also have what we call grand rounds, and grand rounds happen in every one of our department meetings. Teachers and staff, or myself as the counselor, will bring up students' needs. You know, if I find out a student is going through something and maybe they're not going to be as present in the classroom, it's important for teachers to know what's happening, and vice versa. It could be that there's a class that one student is going to but not going to another class, and so is there something about the content of the class or the teacher that maybe we could figure out how to support students in that way. We have what we also call our Defend Your Life, and this is a relatively new addition as of last year, and it was specifically to address our students that were starting and stopping and starting and stopping and not really making progress. And they weren't really kind of making any progress towards their next goal, right? So what we would do is essentially say, okay, it's been 3 or 4 attempts of you starting and stopping. At this point, we need you to sit down with a panel of us. So there's staff that sit on a panel, and the student has to present their case about what is different, how they're going to meet their goal this time, maybe be really honest and realistic about what goals were stopping them, because then we can kind of do some intervention pieces and say, okay, these were the things that were happening, let's address them. And that's been really helpful. We actually have a student who needed 10 credits of social studies and had started them, it's been almost 2 years. And he started again, he stopped again, and we finally said, okay, Daniel, we need to have this Defend Your Life. Like, you need to tell us what's happening. And so he did. He sat in a panel and was really honest about what's going on, and he will, in fact, be a graduate this year because this was an intervention piece that we started that we felt really serious about having to implement. Another thing that we've done is quarter grades. It's another thing that's helped us support students. Again, that kind of revolving door students. So we, at the quarter mark now, are able to submit grades for students so that if they leave before the end of the semester, we can capture some of their progress instead of them starting every time at the beginning of the semester and never being able to get credit for the fact that they did kind of persist through at least part of the course. So that's been an important piece for us. We also have our LRC, which is our Learning Resource Center. It's essentially an open computer lab that is staffed. So students can come in and get help with their essays. They can get help building a resume, looking for jobs. searching college options, and students really do take advantage of it, and it's been a fun resource for us to have. Okay. We have checks and balances in the forms of, we have a full-time registrar who works with us, and after we do an initial kind of check through, making sure that we can count, all of the science credits that we can, or credits from another country, she really looks and makes sure that we didn't miss anything, or that there wasn't something that we could in fact code as English that maybe isn't as clear on the transcript. And that's a really big help for us in terms of making sure that every class that a student has taken gets counted towards their high school diploma. She also double checks with us to make sure, hey, this student had 100 credits, but you put them in high school diploma. Is that appropriate? And then we can kind of think through, yeah, this is what was going on. And so we're really all on the same page about what the student needs. She also has a really unique role in the sense that she gets to see patterns of students kind of from the paper perspective. So whether it's, hey, this student has gotten through all of their classes except for English, or this student has tried just the social studies class 4 or 5 times. And so that's helpful in terms of then she gets to shoulder tap us and say, hey, I think there's something going on with this student. And so she'll do things like charge me with a mission for a specific semester. We have a student in particular who has now been working on the same 5 credits of geometry even since before I was working here. And so when she re-enrolled this year, she got to shoulder tap me and say, okay, she's been working on these for almost 2 years. It's 5 geometry credits. This is your mission. You need to make sure that she gets these done. And so I was able to connect with her and know that this was what we were going to do. And it was, it was a mission that we kind of had enough, a group effort to get done. We also then decided one of the things we got to do in terms of intervention was get a couple of Chromebooks to issue to students so that we could kind of expedite their learning and they could work at home if they didn't have a computer. So she was one of the students that we got to give a Chromebook to, and she is now officially done with those geometry credits, and she will be a graduate with us this June.
Thanks,
and
Lisa.
so that's really exciting.
Before we move on to making the grade, so we've talked about overall kind of changing for rigor and what we changed, and we've talked about some of the support pieces in place. What we want to do before we move on to the curriculum pieces and the college and career readiness standards is open a little chat box here and ask you what questions you have at this point about student support or about anything that has been said so far. So if we need to address any questions, please type that in now. And then after, hopefully everybody can see the chat box. And does this mean we were that oh, thank you. I didn't think we could be that clear and precise in so short of a time. And then once we answer any questions here, we're going to talk about the expository reading writing for college course and what we did to add bridge classes, align curriculum, use the college and career readiness standards as our anchor, and we'll move on from there. Okay, so how many students graduated in 14-15 did not have to pass the CASE? Actually, I don't think, did we have, I mean, maybe we had one.
I don't think any of those numbers actually included students that did not have to pass the CASE.
Yeah, I know that we had a student, we might have added one in at the very end, but I don't think so. Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm thinking, no, I'm thinking right. Okay. Do instructors regularly participate in SOAR?
Oh, I actually forgot to mention that one of the things that I really appreciate about our transition and SOAR specifically is that we're constantly kind of reevaluating to make sure that what we're doing is in fact meeting students' needs. And so we've actually just decided that we're going to start incorporating more teaching staff into our SOAR orientation so that it won't just be myself and admin and our coordinating teacher. So that's something new that we're going to be implementing starting the fall. But the three of us that have been doing SOAR recently, We do them every time, so it's quarterly every year.
Yeah, so Deanne, that's going to be Deanne sitting there probably going, huh? So Deanne's been helping read, transcripts and help get student schedules done, but we decided it would be a great opportunity to bring everybody in and train them and have them teach parts of the lesson and have the students actually experience their teachers before they go into class, and that maybe that would be a nice little piece of comfort. So we'll be doing that this summer. Okay, doesn't look like anybody's typing, so Felisa and I are going to mute, and we're going to turn it over to Deanne, who's going to talk about making the grade.
Hi everybody, this is Deanne. I'm the lead instructor here at ACE, and I'll be sharing with you how ERWC and the CCRS has made a difference in upping the rigor for our students. Student support services is very important, and having Felisa on board has made a huge difference in the success of our students. But we also needed to implement other strategies to reach our goals of advancing students from ESL through ASE. Part of making the grade was establishing outcomes that were attainable. So our path has involved focusing on alignment and connections between the CCRS, DOK, Common Core, and curriculum. We knew we needed to give students rigorous curriculum with scaffolded activities that would allow them to succeed. We needed to identify what we wanted them to know, understand, and do. And to accomplish that, we needed a consistent plan, which we found by implementing the WIPIA lesson plan template, which I'll share with you in a couple slides. When we changed to directed teaching, we established ERWC as our foundation course for both high school diploma and GED students. Those students are in the same classroom. They do the same work. With the new GED in place, that is exactly the kind of work that they need to work on for being able to pass those tests, because it's all about writing now with the GED. And so the ERWC works very well as a foundation course. The reason is it is aligned with the English Language Arts content standards for high school, which of course then aligns with the CCRS for adult learners. It emphasizes the in-depth study of expository, analytical, and argumentative reading and writing. And it's a rich, adaptable curriculum developed by a collaboration of CSU and high school faculty, and is designed to help students develop the academic literacy skills needed for both success in college and the workplace. I was invited to go to that training, which I did. I found it to be extremely helpful in setting up an alignment program here at ACE. We used that curriculum that first year when we went to directed teaching in the ASE class where students scored a 240 or higher on the CASAs. During that year, we realized that there were some students who, in spite of the fact that they scored that high, were still maybe not quite ready to handle the rigors of the curriculum. So we implemented a second class called English Writers Workshop. In that class, students do the same kind of work that they do in the ERWC 401 class, but they might do it in less quantity. They still use the depth. For example, if the module has 4 nonfiction readings in it for ERWC, in Writer's Workshop, we might use 2 articles instead and give students a chance to be able to handle that kind of academic level material. So I'm using the modified, what I call a modified version of ERWC for the writer's workshop. So it's still the same process, it's the same type of curriculum, the same depth, and it still aligns with the CCRS. After we went through the second year of our program, we began looking at the lower levels of classes that were leading into the writer's workshop and the ERWC. We looked at the combination that we had at that time that we called Bridge, and working with teachers who actually teach those classes, we discovered that we really needed to split that up. And so we established the English Fluency class, as well as the English Foundations. But English Foundations used to be the Bridge. These two together used to be the Bridge class. We split them up. And one of the nice things about all of these classes is that they will receive credit for all of these classes. The English Fluency is eligible for ELD credit, ELD 3 credit, which is a real benefit to the students because they are in a program that's going to allow them to gain credits for high school graduation. We needed curriculum for those lower levels, and we wanted to find something that went along with or matched the format of ERWC. And I had a serendipitous experience with ACE in that I taught in the community interest program, and I taught a reading and conversation class to high level, I would say just out of advanced ESL students. And I discovered this book called North Star by Pearson, and I was using that in the reading and writing conversation class that I had. And the students really liked it because they liked the format, they liked the fact that it was very, very clear what the objectives of the lesson were, and it went through the vocabulary and the grammar piece for the writing that they had to do at the end of each unit. So when we were looking for curriculum for the English Fluency and English Foundations, I suggested that we look at North Star. I used it several years ago, and I said, however, okay, I've got a question here for this, the SNL. I'll get to that. Okay. I thought, well, we could look at North Star. I don't know what they're doing now, but we could take a look at it, and that is exactly what Peggy did. She brought in a set of the North Star reading curriculum, and we took a look at what the program looked like now. The SNL that Harkirat is asking about is a speaking and listening, and that's what the beauty of this program, this curriculum is, that they have a speaking and listening as well as a reading and writing. And so in English Fluency, starting out at the beginning of the year, you can actually work the same process and mimic the process of ERWC with the speaking and listening material, and then eventually move into the reading and writing text as students gain confidence. And you can use these interchangeably. You can use them to support each other. The curriculum matches what the CCRS, the College and Career Readiness Standards, are. And we also have gone one step further, and you'll see it says ERWC extensions. We can, because I'm going to get to the process, how the whole process works in the next slide. We've been able to take the content of something out of ERWC, for example, our Value of Life module that we teach in ERWC, and we can involve all 4 levels of classes, English classes, in writing human rights call to action, for example. And we just adapt it to the different levels of each of the groups of students in these classes. we've had tremendous success with this, and that allows us to then open a field trip opportunity to students at all levels. And so part of the alignment is not only just looking at the academic piece, but it's involving the students in a progression that they're well aware of and that they can see, and they become a part of the learning community. We'll see in the next video what this field trips look like and what they were able to accomplish.
So sorry, we're going to go back to that last slide really quickly.
Right.
Before we go to field trips, I just wanted to explain ERWC a little bit from the counseling perspective and how important that has been for us in terms of supporting and motivating students. So one of the things that happens is because we now have 4 levels of English courses, we are able to appropriately place students, which keeps them. They're not in a level that's too high, they're not in a level that's too low, they're not bored, they're not overwhelmed. And so to be able to have them work through these levels and to have them feel good about where they're placed has been really important. The other thing that has been important for us is, like Deanne mentioned, we previously had Bridge as our ABE program, and we were able to give some elective credits for students, but if they're in a class working on English skills, it was hard for me to explain to them, like, you are making progress towards English, and you will, if you didn't need elective credits, it was a hard sell for me to have students in those classes. And so for them to now know that they are getting English credits in every level, and because we're giving ELD 3 credits starting in English fluency, it does count towards all of their upper division English credits that they need for our graduation. And that has been important in terms of students feeling good about what they're learning and where they're moving forward with. The last piece about ERWC that's been important for counseling is the fact that it's ERWC. The fact that we get to say, hey, this is a California State University created curriculum. They're saying that if you can get through this class and do well, that you are ready for college level English. And that is then helpful for me to be able to say, see, you can do this. You do have the skills. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to the idea that we have students that don't have the self-esteem, the academic skills to feel like they can be successful in college or even in vocational ed programs. And so to be able to say, look, this is this curriculum, you got through it, you do have the skills now, has been really helpful in terms of getting them that next push to go to the next step. So with that said, field trips is another really important way that we have been able to create that community, help students find their voice. And Amber mentioned when we first saw the video of her, the Ai Weiwei video. So this was a field trip that we did last year, and students are going to explain to you what it looked like.
Ai Weiwei, contemporary artist and Chinese dissident. He does sculpture, photography, installations that celebrate the freedom of expression and individual rights. Known for his work as consultant on the Beijing Olympic Stadium, he is now under 24-hour watch by the government of China. His work continues to challenge authority as an advocate for human rights and freedom of expression. In April 2015, 45 students and staff went to Alcatraz Island to see the art exhibit.
I just want to say that I saw Ai Weiwei project, and I'm very impressed about what he is doing against all odds.
It amazed me to see how many dissidents were jailed for freedom of speech.
The most exciting thing was seeing all the art exhibits in the context that they were displayed. It's an onion. I've learned many things. It's so layered. But what I found significant about Alcatraz is it's such a paradox. It's beauty. There's beauty and there's amazing things about it, but horrible things happened within that institution.
What I learned from this project, Ai Weiwei, that it's sad that many countries around the world, they still don't have the freedom of expression.
What I hope the world learns is to respect life and treat others with dignity.
What I learned is that we need to fight for our freedom, because if you don't act to it, you can't wait for someone else to do it if they're not seeing what you're seeing. So we have to, if you see something's wrong, you need to act to it. Because if you don't, one day, maybe it's too late, you won't have that chance to act it out.
I think the one thing that I liked the most was one of the students was very enthusiastic about seeing the display, the music inside the prison cell.
What I learned about the Ai Weiwei exhibit is freedom of speech and freedom of expression are very important.
It takes courage to raise your voice and do whatever it takes to be heard.
Be the change in the world that you want to see, whether that's in your education, in your community.
Like Ai Weiwei said, if you don't speak out because you're afraid of something happening to you, they have already silenced you.
Well, it's really fun to teach this group of people because they're so excited about learning.
I think that ACE is an important program in the community because we have so many students that we serve that have been marginalized by traditional systems. We create an individualized approach for students in terms of schedules and classes, and we really try to meet their needs and meet them where they're at.
What I love about this school is how teachers, they support you, how they back you up, and they don't let you down. And that keeps me motivated to come in and keep studying and get my high school diploma.
ACE has really helped me excel not just as a student and in the classroom, but as a person. I have obtained skills that I will use throughout my life.
This is a list of the projects that the students researched in order to make application to go on the field trip.
Yeah, and it's important just to mention that these are projects and topics that the students kind of came up with by themselves, that weren't prompted.
True.
That they did the research on things that they were connected to. So a couple things about our field trip. We went back to the beginning of our presentation. Well, while I'm talking about our field trips, this has kind of sparked for us an annual field trip that focuses around human rights, and that really has, students have said things like, it's given them the ability to find their voice and to find power in their voice. And you saw Amber in our first video, that was from earlier this year, and the video that we did for Ai Weiwei was from last year. And just, I mean, at least for us, just in terms of her presence and her ability to kind of speak and to feel good about who she is, really comes out for us when we think about what we can help transition students to. So that was just a piece of Amber that I thought was important to mention.
The other piece to mention is that the students had to create a universal declaration of human rights as their ticket to get in, and that would get them on the bus ride up, and they would get a ticket to go to Alcatraz, and they had to identify rights being violated. And we decided to do that because we wanted them to be kind of all in on the process and commit something, and also to really connect it back to the larger goal. So we'll upload that at the very end because I forgot to do that. Okay, so we're going to mute, and you're up, Lisa.
Yeah, so another way that we've kind of helped students transition and feel power in their voice and their options has been through college visits and college-specific workshops. One of the things that we do here at ACE is every year we take students to visit and tour the local community colleges. We try to do it when they have like an open house day where they have their programs that are on display, so students can get a sense of what the school feels like, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, and it helps with that kind of warm handoff because they're with a group of their peers and they're with staff they know, and it feels a little bit more tangible for them and kind of less bigger picture, and so it helps them follow through then with going to their next learning venue and figuring out what their next step should be. We also do college-specific workshops. We do FAFSA help, so for the financial aid pieces, I will hold workshops where students come and we just go through it line by line. Same thing with filling out the college applications. If they're trying to figure out what it looks like, where to go, what they click, those are all pieces that we work on here. We do college interest inventories and career interest inventories as well as workshops. And then the other thing that has helped do, because we've now done this for a couple of years, is it's created an academic culture where we really have kind of implemented this idea of academic expectations. And so I have students now that are alumni that are coming back every semester and asking for help for picking out their classes for their next set of classes, or saying like, hey, I don't really know if I should be doing UC, which is the IGETSI route, or the CSU route. And so we've got alumni that are now coming back and asking us for that kind of support because we've kind of embedded this academic and college expectations. So that's been a fun piece that we've been able to do as well. So while these are kind of some specific elements that we have implemented that we think are important for our transition, none of this would have been possible and none of this would have been able to have been implemented if we didn't have a kind of bigger picture about our program and what it needs to do and the leadership to kind of back that up. So Deanne's going to talk a little bit about what it took for us to be able to get to these points.
You're absolutely right, Felisa. We have a basic foundation that we use in working toward alignment, and that started with an administrative vision, and we can thank Peggy for that. Together with the coordinating teacher for the ASE program, they decided to go to a directed teaching model. We then chose a curriculum, which was the ERWC, and we identified through that the process for consistency and stability for student learning. And we added the student support services and improved on that and brought Felisa on board full time, and that is really, I think, the four core points that make up the foundation of our alignment process. But in addition to that, behind the scenes, it's very, very true that this takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. We need to understand the process because that's really what it's all about. It takes time and team effort. So in order to do this work, we put together a dedicated team of ESL, ABE, ASE teachers, and administrators, and we were able to use the consortium money to pay teachers to be part of this team, to evaluate, to implement, to assess, and revise the alignment of our curriculum so that it truly incorporated the CCRS, the depth of knowledge, scaffolded activities, and appropriate assessment rubrics, so that we were able to have some kind of process to share with our students and with the staff. And that's what we did. We used process as a guide because as I've worked with the ERWC curriculum for several years now, for me, it's absolutely magic because it's flexible, it's student-friendly, it gives the desired results, and it doesn't matter whether a student is going for a high school diploma or a GED. It is applicable in both areas. And what you see in front of you right here is the ERWC process for each of the modules that are set out, and also within the modules, each of the activities, because there may be up to 10 to 14 activities within each module. When I went to work with CalPro and learn about the CCRS, we were asked to take one of our lesson plans from the classroom and put it into the WIPIA format. And when I did that, I realized, wow, this is really similar to what the ERWC curriculum does as well. I took the liberty of adding a reflection piece to the WIPIA format. I pulled that out of the ERWC format because I think it's extremely important for students to reflect on the process, the content, and their self-learning as well. that particular piece, I think, has made a huge difference, and particularly this year, I'm using it with every single thing I do every single day, and it's amazing the responses I get from students, not only to what they think about the content, but what they're able to express about their learning process. And that's, I think, what really gives students the ability to be independent learners out there in the world. It's great that they're reading the nonfiction material that is very much a part of ERWC. However, I have discovered that you can use the same process to teach fiction as well. It doesn't matter, what the material is. Let me clarify that. You want to have, quality material, and you want to have, good nonfiction. My students read a lot out of the New Yorker magazine. I bring in the op-ed pieces many times and have them work through that. But the process in itself is very adaptable. And it was 2 years ago, I believe it was, that I was doing a module out of ERWC that is on juvenile justice, and the whole content there revolves around the concept of the idea of juveniles being tried as adults and whether or not that's the appropriate thing to do. The final writing activity for that particular module is to evaluate a case study of someone who has been incarcerated, who was a juvenile but incarcerated as an adult. And one of the students asked me if I had ever seen the documentary Mario's Story. And I said, no, I haven't. We were already into the module, and we were, talking about this whole idea. And I said, but I will. And I did. I went and I watched Mario's Story as a documentary. I downloaded it, and then I incorporated it into the ongoing module. The ability to pull in student-generated lessons, I think is absolutely phenomenal in getting students involved and being a part of the learning community. And I've continued to use Mario's Story, and you never know where the learning is going to come from. The courses that I teach are the ERWC, Writing Workshop. I've taught fluency in another environment, and I've taught foundations. So those are the courses that we direct teach. We actually direct teach all of the social studies content as well, and math as well. Okay, I don't do social studies. I do all the English courses, but we do have teachers who do the other content areas for all of our classes. So using this as a process, this is how do we incorporate ERWC in the courses? The expository reading and writing course is the course. When you go, this is offered training through CSU, and you walk away with 2 semesters of curriculum after going through the workshops and preparing lessons and learning about it. So I have 2 large volume notebooks that have 14 modules in them divided into 2 separate semesters. And I've taken those I've taken those modules and then adapted them. Sometimes I do exactly what's in the ERWC material. Sometimes I venture off, like I did with Mario's Story. It's still the same concept of juvenile justice. Mario was a person who was arrested when he was 18. Actually, I'm sorry. Yeah, he was 17. He was 17. He was arrested and spent 10 years in jail for a crime he didn't commit, and he was eventually exonerated. And so that's not in the ERWC material. There are other case studies in that for that module. But you can pull current events in because the coursework is thematic. There are not 2 courses, there are 2 semesters. So it covers an entire academic year.
Deanne, can I just jump in and add a little piece to what you're saying? So in addition to having those 2 semesters, the most important part about this is that there's a set process. And that's the piece that Deanne already talked about, where you're doing kind of a pre-reading, a reading, a post-reading. You're connecting that with writing. You're reflecting. You're doing all those pieces no matter what the module is. And so embedded in that are a number of strategies that get students to really think critically, to analyze, to apply, and so it's in that process that where the rigor comes. And it happens, the process happens in every single module and through both semesters, so by the time they're done, that process is ingrained in them. And so, and then what happened in answer to Susan's question there is, so the English course sequence is they can move in and out of those depending on their acceleration. So if they start out in foundations, which is kind of advanced ABE, and they do well, they may jump right up into ERWC, or they may have to go to Writer's Workshop, and that's the curriculum that Deanne built and she mentioned before that ties to ERWC and uses the same process. And the nice part is in using North Star follows a very similar process. And so what we want is we want them experiencing these kind of academic skills consistently over and over where they become habit. There's also another question in there, Deanne, about what courses do you teach? So we do all direct instruction. So we do that with science, we do it with math, we do it with English and social studies. The students basically create a college schedule, and we put them in classes where they'll go to this class for 2 hours and the next class for an hour and a half, and on the next, that's maybe Monday and Tuesday, or Monday and Wednesday, and then on Tuesday and Thursday maybe they're doing social studies and geometry. So it's very much like a college class.
And we also have an AM and a PM course, which allows students to select according to what their individual situation is. But we do teach the same coursework in both morning and evening classes. Okay, so our result, and I guess we lost our picture, but the result is that a student can advance and move with comfort, skills, and confidence through the different levels. And I'll reiterate what Peggy said, that students can actually skip levels depending upon their ability to manage the material and what their test scores show. I had a student last year who moved at the semester break, but she went from foundations to ERWC, and she finished up very nicely at the end of this year. The picture that you can't see is a picture of my evening class. And as I mentioned, you can use either nonfiction or fiction material and use the same process, because as Peggy mentioned, that process is really what gets ingrained in the students. They know when they walk into class and we start a new module that the first thing we're going to do is talk about the topic and where we are all at in terms of what we know about that topic before we get into the actual reading of the nonfiction material associated with that topic. So when I teach Shakespeare with the ERWC/Whippier format. I even, when I introduced the very first day of class, I use that same process to introduce standards and procedures for the classroom, and we establish norms for our community of learners. So the process is for me, is pervasive throughout everything that I do in the classroom with the students. And I think that is really what gives them an edge up on being able to handle the academics, because with the constant reevaluating of where we are with the material, I have a good gauge from feedback from the students as to what their comfort level is. And I'm working on getting them to that point, because in the last quarter of the year, for the ERWC class, they read Shakespeare. And the picture that I had on this slide showed my evening class giving what is called the Fist to Five, and that is gaining a grasp of where the students are with the material in front of them. I sent the students on a homework assignment of a sleuthing to find out things about Shakespeare and the period of the time, what was going on, and so on and so forth. So the very first day that they came into class after that, and we started talking about Shakespeare, it was interesting. One of the students said, well, I never knew Shakespeare married a woman that was 8 years older than he was. You know, and so they got a little bit of a taste of what Shakespeare was about. And eventually, after we looked at some documentaries and we discussed Shakespeare and we discussed the time and talked about it, then I asked the students what their comfort zone was with being able to read Shakespeare, how they felt about, you know, do you want to give this a try? Shall we go forward with this? And they gave me, we do the Fist to Five. The Fist is that, you know, I have no idea what's going on. I have no clue. I don't even know who Shakespeare is. And the Five is to indicate that they're very comfortable with it. And they all gave me a 5 on that. And we did read Shakespeare. They read Midsummer Night's Dream, and the morning class read Macbeth. And then they did an oral presentation, a research project, an oral presentation with visual aids at the end of the year. So it was pretty good.
Deanne,
we're working.
Sorry, we have a question down below from
How do social studies?
How do social studies and math teachers support ERWC learning? And I want to caution you, we're down to 15 minutes, so we probably should do a quick answer and move on.
Okay, the quick answer is that we're moving forward with incorporating a ERWC process into the social studies curriculum, and the math teachers support ERWC learning because they know about that process, and they do similar things in the math classrooms using the process. And that's why it's so beautiful, because you can apply it to any subject area. So for the students, alignment involves everybody that's involved in the learning community. And for the student, alignment allows for the process of growth in skill development and confidence going forward, regardless if they're going to go into the workforce, if they're going to school, if they're going to do both. And for educators, it allows us to incorporate the standards well. It allows us to have accurate assessments, and the end result is that we have students who are prepared for transition success because they are part of the process going forward. I have a last video to share with you. One of my students, Peter Mullen, was a GED student. He finished the GED, he passed the test, and he stayed in class. He asked if he could stay in class. And this is what Peter had to say about the process.
Pretty much the reason I stayed is really to get back to being able to write at an academic level. And how it's helping me now is in our business law class, I have to answer how I would handle certain situations and what the ruling would be, and then give my answer on what the reasoning is. And really being reintroduced to the whole writing structure and essay structure thing has really helped me there. So I've had some pretty detailed answers. And that was one of the reasons that I stayed in the class after getting the GED, is just to kind of refine those skills and just, you know, keep the experience level up. And, you know, sometimes if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So I wanted to, just keep going at it. And I also found out I actually really like writing, which I didn't when I was in high school. The last midterm I got 100% on.
Wow.
Every single module or each week I've gotten either full credit or extra credit on it. Really today was the first one I got a little cocky and didn't study enough and missed a few questions on the second midterm. But overall, I mean, with the extra credit, I'm well above 100% still. So going back to college, if I would have just went straight there, I may not have been as detailed in my writing or refined, I guess you could say. I'm taking the courses to get like a business degree, and I'm kind of taking it one step at a time. So first I'll shoot for the AAA or AS, and then after that, can I go to the 4-year route, and then who knows, depending on my age and where I'm at in my life, do I want to go further and get like a PhD or something like that? Not a PhD, sorry.
Masters.
Masters, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
I don't know. We'll see.
Cool.
Excellent.
I actually found the topics really interesting, and really, you could go either way with a lot of them. So, being able to kind of explore different points of views and whatnot. The other thing that really helped is a lot of the handouts you gave that had like different ways to break down and plan your essay, whereas at least I don't recall doing that in school, though I wasn't the best student, so I may not have been there on that day.
So Peter's just a fantastic example of, what the rigor of that coursework does for our students. The fact that it progresses in complexity and depth, as Deanne mentioned, and that the rubrics kind of increase the level of, assessing the skills that they're required to have for mastery. All of that is built into that curriculum, and all of that is built in also to the North Star work as well. So it's a very, I think, nice package that we feel good about this year, and going to that. The top elements, I think that, if we had to sum it all up, is, as far as going for rigor and creating a rigorous environment for students, and also engaging them and helping them to feel successful and building that confidence, is, a large part is the distributive leadership, and trying to get more teacher leaders involved and taking charge, and building the collaboration between colleagues. And I remember when I see that Bronca is in the room, and I remember when I first started this work and transitioning, and she was coming and helping train some of our teachers in technology and other things. One of the things she talked about is, do you have somebody you could send to a trainer of trainers? And I said, no, I really don't. And it was in that moment, probably 5 years ago, that I realized I've got to really start building some teacher leadership. So I'm thankful for that question from her so many years ago. And it's probably the number one, which is why it's listed number one, is that you have to invite teachers to be involved and to collaborate. It's really helpful to anchor your program in the college and career readiness standards, and we had weekly meetings to do that. In fact, we have, in about 10 minutes, we have our last meeting of the year to finish that off, and we really decided, at what level would we teach to those anchor standards, and for each class. And so that was really important. The other thing is we used kind of successful models and best practices, and we did the good educator trait of grab and go, right? And you take and you use, and so that's part of the reason why we're sharing now, is we want people to be able to grab and go as well. And creating a community of learners was critical, and building that academic culture. Providing counseling is really important, and building a flexibility into the system where you can be creative to support students is key. So Felisa mentioned Qualicia and the Chromebook, and it was Felisa's idea, like, if I could just lend her a computer, I think she'd do it. I think she'd do it through Odyssey or distance learning. And it's like, well, then let's order one. And so we did. And having that flexibility in a system and having money set aside to do those little pieces are really important. And then just increasing the academic rigor and having the expectations of your teachers, having it be a college prep curriculum, having the direct instruction, and then providing support. You know, it's important that peers go see each other in the classroom, that administrators stop in. It helps me to sub. I've subbed for Deanne, I've subbed for Helly, and I've done some of the lessons, and so that's been helpful for me just to see what's going on and to know how I can support them. And then the other thing, and one of the biggest things, is, you know, taking time for reflection. And for us, that often looks like, you know, what haven't we done yet? What can we do? We had a meeting like this yesterday where we're talking about completely revamping some things, involving some people in SOAR, as we mentioned, and doing some other new processes. And it's important to stop and reflect and go, man, this is great. And to look at those benchmarks, to look at what you're measuring and say, wow, okay, more students are succeeding. And so it's important to have somebody who can take you through that and talk you through that, or to find the person on your teaching staff that just thinks like that and can lead that discussion. So those are all kind of our big top elements. Oh, Bronca, I'm just now seeing your comment. Thanks. You're a sweetheart. Those are all our kind of top elements. And so I want to go back to kind of the lobby. And if you have questions, you certainly can type it in there. And we'll answer those. Again, this was to give an overview, and so next week Deanne's going to be in the electronic community of practice, and so she'll be able to work with anybody who wants to on specific things there. And now would be a good time to kind of download some files if you want. In that list, we've got a lesson plan format for the WIPIA. It's a blank form. So if you wanted to take that and try and see what it looks like, that's kind of the first step towards rigor, is having kind of that common template and making sure you include all the pieces that make for a strong lesson and forced you to use lots of different strategies. And then we've got a conversion chart. We've got some links to ERWC and how you can, they've got training sessions up, so there's links there for you if you want to send somebody. You need to send an administrator and at least one teacher. We sent first time two teachers and an administrator, but all our folks are now trained. And then just, you can see what else is there. High School Diploma 2, if you want to know about that. You can see what our process is for that and what our board policy is on that. And Catherine is just reminding folks that there's a link there for the community of practice and kind of the group site, and Deanne is doing the same, so she's hoping that you'll join her. And she's also going to give us a holler, so she's moderating it, but if there's something where, you know, we need to jump in and provide an answer or some additional handouts and that kind of thing, Deanne's going to let us know, and we certainly will do that. So for my team, is there anything else we want to say at this point?
I think we covered it.
Okay. Well, we want to thank you guys for joining us today. Hopefully this has been worth your time and you're walking away with something that answered what you came looking for. And you know, it's great for us to be able to talk about our program and to continue to reflect, and that helps us continue to improve. There will be a pop-up window that's going to appear for an evaluation, so we'd ask you to please fill that out. And just, it only takes a couple of minutes. And so hopefully we'll see you next week in the community of practice, so please make sure you jot down or screenshot that link. And thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you so much.
This is Catherine wanting to thank Peggy, Deanne, and Felicia. You did a tremendous job. It was even better than I remembered from CCAE. It's very comprehensive, a great model, and I'm so glad we were able to capture this and your wisdom. So I do hope many of you will be able to join us in the coming week in the Electronic Community of Practices website, where Deanne will be a sort of guest moderator. She'll field all kinds of questions for you and share more concrete tips and details. It's done in a sort of asynchronous way, meaning for your convenience, you can log in whenever you like. There'll be a written discussion forum. You can see what has been posted there, post your questions, share your resources with each other that way. So that will be going on from today, basically, through the 24th, which is next Friday. A week from Friday. So for the next week, you can pick Deanne's brain, and if she doesn't know the answer to the question, she's going to pick Peggy and Lisa's brains.
You bet.
And so you really get 3 rolled into 1. So by all means, take full advantage. If you haven't already become a member of the ECOP, it's free and easy. Sign up takes just a minute. That link will show you how. And if you have any questions about it, please feel free to let us know. And we're always collecting feedback on how we can serve you better, so please do oblige us with the webinar evaluation so we can know what you really liked from this and what else you might like in the future. I can stop talking now, but I'll put my email in the chat pod. If you have any questions about the ECOP or about CalPro, feel free to get in touch. All right. Thank you again for coming and spending a Thursday in June with us. You are among the most dedicated staff we know.